everyone and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we're going to be looking at what's in bloom for the month of October, and this one is kind of a mixed bag. I've got quite a lot in spike at the moment but not so much in bloom to show you, so what I might also do is show you a couple of things that are in spike, so we've got things to look forward to till next month. And some of these I might have already mentioned or posted in community posts or Instagram stories, but hopefully it'll still be interesting to take a closer look at these guys. So with that said, let's take a look at what's in bloom for this month. So first up we've got the gorgeous Cattleya Tokyo Magic, which I've shown you guys before, but is a really reliable bloomer and has bloomed 3 times this year for me so far. And this was a bit of a surprise blooming because it was kind of ravaged by thrips this year, and I can't even tell you how nice it is to be able to check the backs of flowers and check all the flowers and not find any sign of thrips damage. Such a massive relief and a bit of a weight off my shoulders, to be honest, because it was something that was really becoming very depressing, checking your flowers constantly for thrips and seeing all the brown edging on the flowers and the chew marks that they cause. So this is the first blooming since I got rid of thrips, and it's really outdone itself. This is much more than it would usually produce from a single flower spike. And this is all from the most tiny, ridiculous little pseudo bulb. So this is all blooming from this little thing here. So this got stuck in its sheath. It got chewed up by thrips, and then I tried to free it and it got all caught up and tangled basically. So I don't know if that's contributed to how very deformed it is, but it's not a normal pseudobulb, not a normal growth, and you might think the plant is set back when it produces something this tiny, but then we have these from that. Show you relative size. So yeah, I think it's some sort of potential. You can see how it got all caught and folded up in there, and yeah, not good. It got very damaged. I think it must affect maybe the vascular supply to the pseudobulb when you've got thrips kind of chewing at the bulb, because what they were doing is they were actually sitting in the sheaths of the forming new bulbs, so I was actually finding them like sat in the sheaths there. The other new growths that's pushed out also have spikes, so we've got a spike with buds forming on this new growth here, and also on this new growth here. But overall, it's produced a really quite magnificent display considering how bad of a year it's had this year with all the thrips damage, and it's a super fragrant Cattleya. It's actually not my favourite Cattleya fragrance. It's very spicy. So some Cattleyas have really beautiful sweet fragrances. This one reminds me of rice, but like with lots of spices in as well. It's very spicy, but with like a hint of like cooking rice, like while it's cooking. It's a really difficult fragrance to explain, but in almost a very strong and slightly overpowering, unpleasant way. I find it a little bit much. For me, I prefer kind of sweeter fragrances, and this is a very kind of floral, spicy fragrance in my opinion. So it's not my favourite fragrance on a Cattleya. I much prefer the kind of, even the weird Cattleya fragrances like my Guttata across the Velutina that was like cherry menthol cough syrup. I much prefer that to this kind of spicy, ricey fragrance that this one has. Absolutely beautiful display and really reliable bloomer, really easy Cattleya to grow. So again, I definitely recommend it based on that. It's just a joy to grow. It doesn't really require much and produces these gorgeous displays of these beautiful, beautiful, vibrant, almost daffodil yellow flowers, but with this beautiful kind of contrasting. It's actually a very deep purple. It's not red. It's a very deep kind of, I guess, magenta kind of purple. It doesn't really come out very well on camera. Hopefully you can kind of see, at least on the edging, the kind of purple coming through. Just see if I can adjust this to get you a better image. So if I up the brightness a lot, you can kind of see more of a true colour reflection for the lip there. It's got the kind of pink frilling at the edge. Obviously that then makes it way overexposed, but I guess that's the closest I can kind of get on camera to the colour that I'm seeing. So that is the Cattleya Tokyo Magic. Next up we have the not quite fully open but still absolutely beautiful Phalaenopsis Happy Fang Sir, which is I wouldn't call it a novelty Phalaenopsis. I believe it does have some of the Polycalus subgenus in there in the parentage, but it's more of a complex hybrid. It's not like a primary hybrid. It retains some of the fragrance, having been a little bit closer to the species ancestry. It's beautiful, gorgeous yellow, and this yellow doesn't fade, which is something that I really love, because a lot of the times with yellow Phalaenopsis, the yellow does fade, but this one it doesn't. And I absolutely adore the lip on this, because you get this beautiful, beautiful contrast. So can you see it kind of starts off this really bright, vibrant kind of hot pink, and then it fades to a sort of more orangey colour, which then kind of freckles the rest of the flowers. It's really, really beautiful, really interesting lip on this one, and not quite fully open. This one has a really interesting habit in that it forms these really long spikes, and the spikes basically, this happened to me last time as well, so I think this is a habit that the plant has. They do form buds as the spike is forming, and they blast along these, and then it'll get to the end and form clusters of flowers, and this happened exactly the same way last time. So I don't really know what the problem is. This is the exact same pattern of blooming as it followed last time, so this isn't like a fluke. So this is the first spike that it formed. It's then actually formed another 2 spikes, so I actually cut the spikes that were formed at the beginning of the year, because I just, my personal preference is I prefer to cut spikes and get a better blooming at the second flowering, just because aesthetics, in my opinion, flower spikes look better when they're freshly formed, rather than, you know, some of the Phalaenopsis flower spikes that get very, very long and they keep kind of branching and they look a little bit sparse. So that's just personal opinion, personal preference. It's completely up to you what you do. I think the plant has energy to do both if it's a healthy plant that you're keeping well. So I don't think you have to cut the bloom spikes. It's just my personal preference. So you can see we've got some more buds and branches forming on the second spike there, and we've got the third spike there. And it's the first time this one's spiked 3 times for me. Usually it does just spike twice, so it usually just produces like an arm of each. At least this time they're actually facing forward as well, because last time they went off in completely different directions, so this is going to make filming a little bit easier. This guy sits on my top shelf, so it just kind of cascades down very nicely, and for me that gives me a better enjoyment of the flowers because of the positioning on the shelf there. It is getting a little bit wild in the root department. I think it needs a repot at some stage, and maybe to try and encourage these guys into the pot. You can see that this one has actually been down into the pot, looped around the pot fully, and then it's come back up. So yeah, I would at some point like to try and contain some of these giant roots a little bit more, and maybe try and encourage them to get back into the media, because they're trying to encroach into other pots at the moment, as Phals like to do. They like to get friendly with their neighbours. So that is the beautiful Phalaenopsis Happy Fang Sir. Next up, you guessed it, it's twinkle season, and we've got a lovely show with 4, 6, 7 spikes from this one. The most impressive spike being this guy here, is cascading off the side. I didn't realise these had opened, and I went into my grow room and could smell the beautiful vanilla kind of scent, and had a hunt round and found that my twinkles had opened, which is always a lovely surprise. So this is my yellow twinkle, and I also have more of a kind of pinky beige twinkle opening up here. This one had many more flower spikes, and it's taken longer to actually start to open them, so it's not fully open yet, and I think it's going to be quite impressive when it does open them all. But for now we have the beautiful yellow twinkle to keep us occupied, and they always cheer up the grow room. They're so fragrant and beautiful. The flowers aren't long lasting, but they're so easy to care for and miniature that you can fit many different colour flowers into your grow room, and they'll all kind of bloom very slightly at different times and work on spikes at different times, so you can actually have twinkles kind of twinkling for quite a long time. So the combined effect is quite showy, magnificent and long lasting in combination. So those are my Oncidium Twinkles. Next up we have the Phalaenopsis that's mislabeled. It's blooming again with just one flower on the spike. So this is an Eric Young Foundation Phalaenopsis hybrid that says in the pot that it's Noirmont, and it is most certainly not. I had this one in bloom at the last What's in Bloom, and I kind of explained a bit more about it there, but it's opened up another bloom spike, so we'll count this as a separate blooming. Again, absolutely beautiful Phalaenopsis. I love how curved back the flower is, so it kind of looks like a lion, and then the lip just kind of sticks out like sort of hand-sized dinner plate. It's absolutely beautiful. One of my favourite Phalaenopsis. And we do have some other buds Phalaenopsis are working on, but they seem to be taking their time this year, whereas last year I had them all in bloom by now. So that is my Phalaenopsis No ID Eric Young Foundation hybrid, which hopefully we will be able to ID by the end of the year when they've all bloomed. Next up, going from the big to the very small, we have my Masdevalia glandulosa in full bloom, or at least in partial full bloom. So we've actually got so many spikes on this that it's just absolutely shocked me. It's a close-up of the bloom there. The little dots look almost gland-like, which is what gives the glandulosa its name. And the fragrance on this, with having this many flowers open, is just incredible. It smells so strongly of kind of sweet cloves. It's a really beautiful fragrance. And we can just have a look at the plant. I'm really shocked at how well it's done. This is in my seramis mix in a self-watering lechuza pot, and it's just really taken off. Such beautiful flowers, and I think there are two forms of the glandulosa because it's quite widely distributed in two regions in Ecuador and Peru, I believe, and there seem to be two kind of forms available of this. So you can find a form that's got a more open flower to what I'm showing you now. So my one seems to be of the more closed flower variety. I couldn't tell you which distribution this is from. This is just a division I got from Spiceltic Plants in the UK. But yeah, I love my version anyway. And the open version is beautiful also. I think Masdevalias are so majestic with their kind of long tails. And the glandulosa it's got quite a bad reputation for being quite fussy, and I certainly found that. It was my only Masdevalia I really struggled with to start with when I first got it, but now that it's adapted, it's my most rewarding Masdevalia. So I think that once it does get adapted to your environment, maybe it's less fussy, but maybe getting it to adapt is the most difficult stage. So we're just going to kind of take a look at the plant and count the blooms on this. So we've got one here, one here, one here, so that's 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's kind of on the lower half of the plant. And I think we had some more hidden kind of higher up in there. just been around the plant and I'm counting 15 bloom spikes on this, which is amazing. This one's grown on the lounge windowsill downstairs, so it's a slightly cooler environment than my grow room would be, but it's grown on a windowsill in the house, so I'm really, really happy with the flowering outcome on this beautiful, beautiful orchid. So that is my Masdevalia glandulosa, and I think this is probably one of the most fragrant Masdevalias. The other fragrant Masdevalia I think is the attenuata, because I have a hybrid with attenuata and Dracula gorgona, and that one's incredibly fragrant, and the Dracula isn't supposed to be fragrant in that hybrid, so the attenuata is where it's getting that fragrance from. So glandulosa and attenuata I think are probably the most fragrant Masdevalias, and for me glandulosa is just one of my favourite fragrance on any orchid actually. It's like sweet cloves mixed with maybe a little bit of cinnamon, but mostly sweet cloves. And with this many flowers, I've only got 4 open at the moment, and the smell's pretty intense, so I can't wait until we've got more of these buds open. Hopefully the fragrance will sort of permeate the whole of the living room. Next up we have another Masdevalia, and this is the Masdevalia paivaeana that I had 2 divisions of. I potted one up in moss and one in seramis, and this is the one that's been in seramis from the beginning, which is doing the best, but the one that I had in moss is also doing absolutely brilliantly now. This is the only one to have flowered, and I've only got one single flower on here, and it is really beautiful. It's kind of similar in structure to the glandulosa. It has these really cute little fuzzy hairs on it. I don't know if you can see very clearly. It's got these little hairs that kind of fringe the outside and go into the, I don't know what's a petal and what's a sepal and what's a lip with the Masdevalia, I've got to be honest with you, but into the tube we get lots of little fuzziness, and it's kind of yellow and pink predominantly are the colours in there. And this one was supposed to be fragrant. When I bought it from Burnham Nurseries, they did have fragrant written in the description. However, I'm not detecting any fragrance at all from this. It could be that's linked to growing conditions, but I suspect that maybe this is just not a fragrant variety, or not a very fragrant, at least compared to something like the glandulosa. Such tiny, tiny little flowers. If I bring a glandulosa flower up to compare sizes, so that is the glandulosa flower. So you can see it's quite a huge size difference there. Masdevalia glandulosa is much bigger, and the glandulosa is quite small for a Masdevalia. The paivaeana is just absolutely tiny, so delicate, but very, very cute, very pretty, and I'm happy that I've got it to bloom. It's a really awkward one though, because it has such a sprawling growth habit. It just kind of produces all of these elevated growth that kind of sprawl, and this one's trying to form roots outside of the pot here, which is not a helpful thing for a Masdevalia to do. So yeah, I think it lends itself very well to making divisions and keikis, which is probably why it was so cheap from Burnham Nurseries, to be honest. So that is the Masdevalia paivaeana. Next up we have another little miniature orchid, and this is the Restrepia cuprea, which has absolutely taken off. It always has done well for me. I have this potted in seramis now in a self-watering pot, but it's always been a very vigorous grower, especially compared to my other Restrepias, which were smaller divisions admittedly, so maybe it's not a fair comparison to draw. But the cuprea is just absolutely gorgeous. It's got these stunning coppery coloured flowers, and it seems to be much more temperature tolerant than some of the other Restrepias. In fact, my Restrepias seem to be a little bit more temperature tolerant than my Masdevalias. I've had less leaf yellowing and leaf tip dieback on my Restrepias than I have with my Masdevalias in the hot weather. So that's kind of backwards, because Restrepias are supposed to be the most fussy, most requiring of highest humidity and really, really fussy cold growers. They seem to be a little bit easier even to grow than the Masdevalias, but my Masdevalias have definitely bloomed more for me. So you can just see how interesting the flowers are. Unfortunately, Restrepia flowers, or at least the cuprea flowers, are not very long lived at all. They probably only last a week or so each, maybe a little bit longer. I've never timed it, but it always seems that I think about filming and already some have dropped, as you can see here. So this one had 7 flowers at once, I believe. It's starting to form a few more now, but I think we've currently got 4 on here, 5. But yeah, it's doing exceptionally well. Really, really beautiful little Restrepia. cute little miniature to add to your collection. If you're into Restrepias, I'd say start off with the cuprea if you want to start off with a nice, relatively easy one compared to some of the other Restrepias I've got. So that's the Restrepia cuprea. And next up we have the really pretty little Phalaenopsis bellina alba crossed with tetraspis C1. So this is a really pretty hybrid that I've been dying for ages and not been able to find, and then suddenly it came quite widely available this summer in Europe. Orchid Garden and Classen both had this in at one stage. Classen sold out pretty much immediately. I ordered one of the younger sized ones from Orchid Garden, which is now spiking. I might show you some of my orchids in spike in a bit and walk around the grow room, even though the sound quality won't be quite so good. So yeah, I bought that one, and it didn't have that many roots when I got it. It had a few, it had enough to recover it. So it's recovered, it's producing loads of roots, and we've also got a spike starting on it. But this one I then ordered because I was doing another Orchid Garden order for a couple of the Clowesia and Catacitinae that they had. And I decided to get the flowering size one, which they had, which has come into stock. And I also got another one of the little young plants because they were only like €7, something like that. I don't know, they were really cheap for what they were anyway. I can't remember exactly. So I got one of those as well. So I've now got 2 young plants of this hybrid and 1 flowering size, which you can see in front of you. Got really beautiful salmony pink flowers. They're really gorgeous. They've got a slight sheen to them and they're very waxy. They're fragrant. They smell to me much like kind of lemon air freshener. So where some things are kind of likened to kind of lemon curd or straight lemons, this one's a little bit more artificial lemony. So yeah, like lemon air freshener I would go with. But it's quite a nice fragrance. It's not overpowering. It doesn't fill the whole grow room, but you can notice it definitely when you're kind of sitting around it filming or looking at the flower. So that's the Phalaenopsis bellina alba crossed with tetraspis C1. Okay, so I've just come into the grow room and I just wanted to show you a couple of the things that are in spike that I can't necessarily actually lift down to show you. One of which being my absolutely monstrous Shari baby, which has produced 2 spikes and they are still in the process of branching. But yeah, this is the top shelf and that's the ceiling. So I'm really excited for the display, and I'm hoping it'll come down even further and curve forwards, and we'll have a beautiful cascading Shari baby forest, because it certainly looks like it's trying to hit the ceiling there like a tree. So it's really healthy, vigorous plant. You might not be able to see it so well because of the lighting situation in here, but this is my beautiful Shari baby, so hopefully we'll have flowers from that one soon. Another one in spike that I wanted to show you is my Catacitium Orchid Glade Jack of Diamonds. This one we have 8 buds on the spike. Doing super well. Getting really fat back there. So I'm really happy with it. So that's my Orchid Glade Jack of Diamonds. Still in bloom. We've got the really beautiful RTH Fushu Glory Happy Holiday. The striping didn't come out in that one. It then tried to make another flower buds directly from the top of this stem, which then kind of dried up. Might possibly get a better blooming on the second blooming. We've got a growth that's just maturing here. Can't tell yet if it's got a sheath in or not. This is the second leaf at the moment. That is a really long lasting flower. Lasted longer than the Guttata crossed with Velutina, which is now dried behind there. So that is the RTH Fushu Glory Happy Holiday. And then we've also got my kind of novelty Phal shelf. So this one is the Samira in bloom again, and really waxy Jong's Red Sun. Still in bloom from that same flower, which has faded a little tiny bit. And then we've got the second bud starting to open now. Back here is a freshly opened flower on the Phalaenopsis bellina Red Apple, and one that needs to come off, but it's not quite ready to be released yet. And we've also got another bud starting behind that. Things are still a little bit in chaos here from where I put the shelves up recently. That's where my Phalaenopsis Happy Fang Sir lives. Another Phal I left that spike on, I'm not sure why. It started a second spike as well, and it's blooming again off the old spike. And something else I wanted to show you guys. I've got my Nelly Isla there spiking. This is the red velvet variety, so I'm super excited for that. My Bartley Schwartz, nearly in full bloom there. Very small spike, but it's absolutely beautiful. I love the flowers, they're huge. This one has adapted to pumice, no problems at all. And it's even started another new growth there as well. So beautiful fragrance on this one, I love it. And this beautiful guy is the Phalaenopsis that we repotted together following, I bought it from eBay. It's like a white version with a slight yellow centre, and it matured a growth and put up a spike shortly afterwards. So excited for that. I reckon this is going to open any day because we've got one of these buds just starting to open there. So I'm super, super excited for that. I can't remember the name of the Phalaenopsis. I'll put it up on screen because it didn't come with a tag, which worried me a little bit. But it was like Sun Glow, I think. Something like that. I'll put the name up on screen. So excited to see these buds opening. We've also got my paivaeana American hybrid there, who's produced a spike from one of the later fans to mature in the year. It's since started a lot of new growth, so it's maturing from like one of the older fans, but it's really exciting. It's my first rebloom of a paivaeana. This is my only path up until now, when I've bought a few more from a recent order, which I will upload shortly. But it's my Path American hybrid, and that's where the bellina alba crossed with tetraspis C1 lives. It's got my dendrobium banana chocolate just starting to open up now, and that's not a registered hybrid name, that's just a trade name that Sanook dendrobiums use. And still got my denphals in bloom from before. I'm going to refer to them as Dendrobium Phalaenopsis type. That may not be the correct nomenclature for them, but I can't research the parentage of these. They're just Sanook hybrids. The trade names aren't like registered hybrids, so like Polar Fire, Snow Jade, they're not real registered names. They're just what the company has registered as like a commercial name for them to sell them under. They're not proper names anyway. We're never going to know the parentage of this. I think most people call them Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums for ease of reference. So that is what I'm going to call them in videos, guys, because I can't be doing with all of the confusion with names and nomenclature. I just want to enjoy my orchids. My Angrippum leonis is spiking. I'm super excited about. And my beautiful, beautiful little Gastrocylus japonicus is spiking, and I know I showed you guys pictures of this beauty before, but pictures just don't do it justice. It's got these beautiful like translucent edgings to the flowers that kind of make it look like it's out of focus or blurred, but that is just the flower, I promise you. Obviously my focusing isn't that good because I'm filming on a phone, but they are just really beautiful, and a lot of people have said in the comments that they remind them of eggs, and I totally, totally agree. Like a little chick emerging from an egg or something, aren't they? Or like egg yolks. They're so beautiful, and relative to the plant, they're like pretty much the size of the plant. Such a rewarding little plant to own. I'm not detecting much of a fragrance. I think it is supposed to be fragrant, but so far nothing's jumping out at me, but it's just a gorgeous little easy growing miniature. And Sarcochilus olivaceus. Hello Spike. I got this one from Acre, and I did a little Sarcochilus haul because I really wanted to get into the genus and I was scared of Brexit, which has been postponed, so we're fine to order orchids, except it's now winter and I don't want to order orchids. So I'm glad that I got that out of the way before winter set in anyway. So this one came with 2 orchids mounted, and the second one has started a spike, but it seems to want to tunnel its spike down into the media there, so I am going to have to pull that up when it's a little bit longer. But this one is being sensible and going over the edge of the pot, and I can see 3 buds at the moment forming, so I'm really excited to see that one because I think it's supposed to be a fragrant Sarcochilus. Really, really pretty little species Sarcochilus. And also This is my little Encyclia Mariae crossed with Citrina, and we've got a little spike there, and you can see a little bud forming at the end, which I'm really excited about. Is that 2 buds? Usually they just produce 1 bud. I don't think I've seen a flower with 2 buds. I don't know. Maybe it is. It looks a bit weird, doesn't it? It doesn't look like 1 bud, it's definitely got something else there, so maybe we'll get 2 flowers from that. I'm not entirely sure, but that'd be exciting, wouldn't it? Another one that I filmed properly earlier when it had just opened, shocked me, was my Bulbophyllum and lacinatum. And I was really surprised at this because it was just hiding behind all the other Bulbophyllums. And then I pulled it out one day to do some watering and found this fully formed. So that formed amazingly rapidly, probably within a week because I hadn't checked it from the week before. And yeah, I don't know how it formed this fast. It was kind of hidden behind the plant, so it could have formed a little bit faster, and I guess I just never noticed it when it first started. But it's really beautiful little Bulbophyllum. Not too much of a fragrance on this one, nothing compared to the Elizabeth Ann Buckleberry. Just really, it reminds me of wheat or something. It's really pretty, really autumnal colours. That's the Bulbophyllum lacinatum. I've also got a spike starting on my Rhynchostylus gigantea crossed with Holcoglossum flavescens. Now this one spiked for me at the end of last year, and then the spike dried, which you can see the remnants of there. It never did anything, so it started spiking around the same time, so hopefully it actually continues it instead of stalling this time. Also got what I think I can see is potentially something forming in a sheath of the Epi something, Renee Marquez crossed with Schilleriana. There's something starting there, isn't there? Maybe we'll get blooms, which would be fun. I'm really interested in what that hybrid looks like with the Schilleriana influence. And that is everything, I think, in spike or bud or bloom until next month. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel for more regular orchid updates. And I will see you guys later. Bye!